Hello, I'm Laura Richcreek with Laura's Voice, and welcome to Laura Reads Foxed Books, Season 2. We're reading The Misdemeanors of Nancy by Eleanor Hoyt and illustrated by Penryn Stanlaws. Last week we met Nancy. What did you think of her? I think I like her. I understand Priscilla's exasperation, but Nancy means well and doesn't intend to hurt anyone. Let's see what she's up to in this week's chapter, A Lesson in Democracy. Chapter 2, A Lesson in Democracy. "He's wild to meet you," bubbled young Mrs. Winston. Nancy elevated her chin slightly and looked volumes of indifference. "English, you said?" "Yes," replied the matron rapturously. "Entitled?" "Oh, yes. Of course, he's only a baronet, but it's a very good old family." "I don't care to meet him." Nancy's tone was conclusive. Mrs. Winston gasped. "Why, Nancy? Refuse to meet a new man?" "My dear, I've borne much at the hands of my married friends. I've helped them entertain cowboys and Indians and anarchists and poets and Bostonians. Whenever there has been a San Juan to storm, I've been called in and have led the charge. But I must draw the line somewhere. In England I will do as the English do. I will flirt with Englishmen because there are no other men available, and, incidentally, because the English girls don't like it. But in a land literally flowing with masculine milk and honey, to deliberately devote an evening to an Englishman? Never." "But, my dear, he's perfectly lovely." "Elizabeth, I know that you've already married me to the baronet, have been invited to visit at the castle. Has he a castle? And are having tea on the terrace beyond the yew walk. But, my dear, you've got to tumble your luggage out of that pink guest chamber and give up your Hunt Ball. I know those Englishmen. I've spent 2 summers over there. I've scoured the country for the brilliant, fascinating Englishmen of the novels, and the English women with French clothes and morals. I didn't find either. The Englishman makes love badly, and the English woman dresses badly. Neither can be saved. I won't meet your lion. I'm positive he couldn't roar." "But, Nancy, I promised him." "The moral of that is, don't count your Anglomania before it is hatched." "Nancy, there are times when, well, my dear, when you are actually a wee bit vulgar." "I should hope so," said Nancy cheerfully. The bell rang violently. The cook appeared at the library door, looking like a large wine jelly in imminent danger of collapse.
"Sure it's a letter the boy's after bringing,"
she explained. Mrs. Winston took the letter and opened it. Horror wrote itself upon every line of her pretty face, and her fluffy pompadour visibly rose. "It's from John. He's bringing him tonight." "The baronet?" "Yes." "Well, that's good. If I were you, I'd want to have it over." "But Mary has gone. I've no maid. Oh, what an idiot John is." "Can't Nora cook and serve too?" "Serve?" Mrs. Winston's voice expressed the scorn of scorns. "Serve? Look at her. She'd fill the dining room and ooze out at the windows. There'd be no room for us. She'd stick between the chairs and the wall. She never had on a pair of corsets in her life. She can't breathe with her sleeves rolled down. She'd drop everything she touched. She doesn't know a carafe from a giraffe. She wheezes like a grampus. Wouldn't she be a treat to a man who is used to flunkies behind all the chairs?" "She would," agreed Nancy fervently. "No, I'll have to go and get somebody. But there's no time. Oh, if I had John here! My dear, don't ever marry. Even the best men are absolutely devoid of consideration for their wives. Thank heaven the dinner is all right. I ordered what I knew you'd like. I'll change the wines. There's never any use wasting good wine on a woman. But the maid! Oh, Nancy, what shall I do?" The woman who was to entertain a live baronet fell back among the sofa's pillows and groaned aloud. "Well, it is a pity to be married to a brute," said Nancy feelingly. That brought her friend to a sitting posture. I'd like to know what you mean by that. John is the most considerate man in the world. It's odd if a man can't invite a friend to his own house. How could you expect a man to remember domestic details in the midst of all his rush of business?" "Exactly," drawled Nancy with a provoking grin, and the young wife looked foolish. Suddenly Nancy's eyes began to twinkle, and her dimples became aggressive. "Elizabeth, I'll meet your Englishman." "But that won't help me in the servant dilemma." "Just won't it? Elizabeth Winston, I shall serve that dinner." But, stammered the hostess. "But me no buts. I'm adorable in a cap and apron. It has been the regret of my life that I couldn't adopt them for ordinary houseware. I've an outfit that I used at the cooking class. It was such a howling success that I used to spoil my puddings by weeping salt tears into them because the class wasn't coeducational." The girl's enthusiasm was contagious. Her friend was beginning to take a more cheerful view of life. "But, Nancy, do you know how?" "Do I know how, is it? Faith, I'm the finest ever. I'm warranted smooth running, noiseless, tidy, honest, and no followers. They all walk with me." The new maid executed a few steps and wound up with a respectful curtsy. "Is it engaged I am? John can never keep his face straight." "John's a dear. He'll have the time of his life." "You'll be sure to make blunders." "My dear mistress, if your baronet isn't a mummy, he'll not know whether I'm pouring champagne or cider vinegar for him by the time the entree comes on. He is going to get valuable sidelights on American domestic affairs. He'll want to rent the castle and come to New York to live after he sees the American domestic on her native heath. Ring for a cab, honey. I'm going home to don my war paints. I'll bring your flowers for you. Dinner at 7? 7:30. I'll be here to meet the noble baronet and help him off with his galoshes. Auf Wiedersehen." She was off in a frou-frou of silk petticoats and excitement, and Mrs. Winston wandered toward the kitchen, shaking her head, yet smiling the while. Nancy's friends have unswerving confidence in her prowess. At 7 o'clock the new maid appeared, and enthusiastically hugged her mistress. "I'll go in your room, ma'am, and put on my apron and cap." "I got John on the telephone, Nancy, and told him. I was afraid he'd make a scene when you opened the door." "What did he say?" "Say? He howled. I couldn't wait to hear what he would say when he got his breath, so I rang off." When Mr. Winston rang his own doorbell at 15 minutes past 7, the door was opened by a vision that made the good-looking Englishman with him drop his monocle, and then fish feebly for it and readjust it. Nancy had not been a false prophet. She was adorable. Her light hair curled in distracting waves from under the most becoming of caps. Her plain black frock and coquettish apron set off her figure to perfection. Her cheeks were pink with excitement. Her eyes were even more mischievous than usual, which was a work of supererogation. Her dimples were struggling valiantly to assert themselves and give the lie to the beautiful demureness of her lips. The baronet stared. Then involuntarily he turned and looked with mild speculation at his friend Winston. Guilty embarrassment was written in every line of his host's face. A gleam of pity for Mrs. Winston dawned in the baronet's heart, and he discreetly shifted his glance once more to the maid. After all, he admitted to himself, Winston would be more than human if— Nancy took the Englishman's coat and hat. He wore no galoshes. "I'll run up and get into a dinner coat, old man," said Winston, still struggling with confusion. "Show Sir Henry into the drawing-room and call Mrs. Winston," he added in choked tones. "Yes, sir," said the maid respectfully. But Sir Henry, looking up suddenly, intercepted a most deliberate and meaning wink, which the reprehensible young woman was delivering to the departing Winston. She blushed. The baronet looked unseeing and followed her into the front room. As she turned to go, he stood between the portières and looked down at her admiringly. She hesitated, blushed more deeply. He stooped forward. "I'll call Mrs. Winston, sir," said an irate voice from a young woman who vanished through a door at the other end of the room. But the face that looked back at him was dimpling gaily. So Sir Henry smoothed his mustache and tried not to look more foolish than was prescribed in nature's original plan. "It is too bad," said Mrs. Winston as she led the way to the dining room 10 minutes later. "I sent for Nancy, but couldn't have her. You see, I ordered the table laid for 4 in the hope that she would come. You really must meet her, Sir Henry. She's quite worthwhile." Sir Henry was deciding that pink candlelight really made the Winstons' maid absurdly pretty, but he murmured polite regret. "Your young women are charming, charming," he said, "but I feel no sense of loss tonight." He bent gallantly toward his hostess, but sent a swift glance toward the slender girl behind her chair. The gray eyes met his for a fraction of an instant. Then the soft lashes fell, and only the dimples were conscious. Winston took up the tale. "Yes, you really should know Nancy," he said with deep conviction. "She's a liberal education to any man, imported or domestic. She's delightful, you know, but plays the very deuce of hearts. I understand her boudoir has a frieze of scalps, and she keeps her open fire going all winter, with no fuel but written proposals. Flirt. Nancy would flirt with a snowman. What's more, he'd thaw, even if the temperature were 30 degrees below zero." Sir Henry noticed that the maid, who was filling the glasses, had flushed furiously. While he watched her, she raised her eyes and shot one vindictive look at the host, who received it with imperturbable serenity. "Jealous," thought the baronet. "Surely, when the thing is as open as this, his wife must see it. Well-bred little woman to bluff it out so placidly. I don't think I would care for your irresistible young woman," he said with a touch of hostility in his tone. "I'm not fond of that sort of girl. Of course, I understand that being your friend, she is undoubtedly delightful, but personally I've a deep-rooted objection to the emancipated modern girl. We have the type in England. You seem to have more specimens of it here, though I'll admit your girls are more attractive than ours. I've an old-fashioned taste for a simple, unworldly type of girl, who doesn't flirt with every man she meets and commonize herself in doing it." Winston choked painfully on a fishbone, and his wife unfeelingly laughed at him. "Try a bread crust," advised Sir Henry with polite concern. The dinner went smoothly. The waitress was as deft as she was pretty, and the guest had to take himself mentally by the throat in order to keep himself from following her every movement with his eyes. He was distrait, and his share of the conversation trailed off into inanities whenever the maid was within his range of vision. Once or twice he pulled himself up with a round turn, conscious that someone had asked him a question, but absolutely in the dark as to what the question was. He stumbled out of the predicament as best he could, and inwardly cursed himself for a fool. But there was one little shining lock that fell over her left temple and fluttered there as she moved about. He wanted to brush it back, and yet knew he would miss it if it were suppressed. Then those dimples. One of them was but a hint of a dimple. It was constantly hovering on the verge of self-revealing, yet it never deepened and showed what it could do. If the demure lips would only smile, that dimple would surely develop maddeningly. If he only dared make her smile. Then he wondered what he could say that would make her smile. Nothing, under the circumstances. Of course a maid could not show that she listened to the conversation. But if he were alone with her, if she weren't a maid, if— Oh, by Jove, what a bally ass he was making of himself! Just as he reached this unflattering conclusion, she lifted her long lashes and gave him one direct look, half mocking, half serious, wholly disconcerting. He felt himself flush to the roots of his hair. He had an awful conviction that he was looking like a fatuous fool. He set his wineglass down hastily. The maid came to his side to fill it. He noticed how white and beautiful her hands were, and how exquisitely her wrists were molded. She used violet perfume, a very delicate, subtle violet. "Don't you think so, Sir Henry?" asked Mrs. Winston's voice from some faraway world. "Yes, indeed," declared the baronet earnestly. "Still, it's odd for an Englishman to feel that way about it." "Oh, I don't know," stammered the baronet. He doesn't yet know to what heresy against race and class he had committed himself. Fortunately, Mrs. Winston loved nothing better than the sound of her own voice, and the guest hoped that his own preoccupation would pass unnoticed. Winston, to be sure, didn't say much, but he laughed a great deal. Sir Henry felt that it would be easy for him to dislike his host. Winston had seemed a very good fellow in London, and he had been very decent about his New York clubs and all that, but he appeared rather foolish at his own table. A fellow needn't grin like a Cheshire cat in order to seem amiable. Then, too, a married man really ought to pull up a bit. He certainly owed something to his wife. He had no right to carry on an affair with a maid in his own home. It was not only immoral, it was deuced bad taste. The baronet worked himself into a fine glow of virtuous indignation and looked sternly at Winston. Then he tried to look sternly at the disreputable young person, but the effort was a lamentable failure. She happened to be looking at him, and their eyes met. After all, a young and pretty girl might be foolish and easily flattered without meaning any harm. She was such a child. Unquestionably it was all Winston's fault. Winston was a cad. Someone ought to warn her. He glared at the genial host, who was cheerfully consuming his salad, and though a gay Lothario, did not look the part. "You've a brother somewhere over here, haven't you?" asked Winston. "Half-brother in Canada," said Sir Henry. "You'll see him?" "Oh, yes." He hadn't intended to visit Jack, but he would. Yes, certainly he would. Of course, Jack was the black sheep. But then, after all, what had he done? A mésalliance. Gamekeeper's daughter. Jack ought to have known better, but the governor had cut up pretty rough. There was no use turning the boy out without a shilling. Probably the girl was pretty. Sir Henry had never thought much about it. He had been in Cambridge at the time, and he had never known Jack well. But now he had the running of things, he must look Jack up and do something for him. A man had a right to marry the woman he loved, but he ought to consider the family. Yes, a man must consider the family. Oh, Lord, what was he going into all that for? "You are going west after big game when you leave here?" Mrs. Winston was asking. "Yes, I leave tomorrow." "Why, I thought—" began Winston, surprised. "I've had letters," insisted the baronet firmly. "I'm obliged to go tomorrow." "Too bad, old man. You've not done New York yet. You haven't met Nancy. Still, hunting may be better than being hunted. On the whole, perhaps you've chosen the better part. The Indians don't go in for scalps now. You'll be safer among them." "John," said Mrs. Winston sternly. Winston certainly did seem to be rather an ass, thought the guest. Perhaps he ought not to drink at all. The table was cleared. The coffee came on. Sir Henry took his cigar and looked questioningly at his hostess. "You'll not let us drive you away?" "Oh, no, I'm used to smoke. John smokes like a furnace. Now, if Nancy were only here to help me chatter. We do need a pretty girl in that vacant chair. How would I do, ma'am?" asked a sweet, velvety voice. Mrs. Winston gasped and was speechless. "That's the very thing, Mary. You'll fill the bill. Sit down," said Winston heartily. The maid slipped into the chair opposite the baronet and smiled at him across the roses, His monocle fell into his coffee with a splash, and he made a fruitless effort to pull himself together. "This is a democratic country, you know, old man," said Winston jovially. "We don't go in for class distinctions as you do in England. And she is a pretty girl. I'm not afraid to call any unprejudiced man to witness on that point." Mrs. Winston had caught her breath. "John," she said in strangled tones, "I'm ashamed of you. And of Nancy, too. Sir Henry will think us unpardonably rude. I should never have allowed it. But when Nancy sets her head upon a thing—" The Englishman was still staring helplessly across the roses. The bewitching face beyond them beamed upon him. The fugitive dimple had come out boldly into the open, and the lips were smiling deliciously. "He doesn't look unforgiving," said the smiling lips. "Don't bother, Elizabeth. I'll explain." She did. 2 hours later, Sir Henry stood once more between the drawing-room portieres, smiling down at a piquant face under a dainty cap. "You haven't told me that I might come to see you," he said reproachfully. "But you leave tomorrow." "I've changed my mind," said the baronet. "He's a ripping good sort. John Winston explained to his wife a week or two later. "But he positively embarrasses me. He can't do enough for me. You'd think he felt that he owed me an apology for something or other."
"We introduced him to Nancy,"
said Mrs. Winston. End of Chapter 2. A Lesson in Democracy. Oh, this chapter could have a few titles. A Lesson in Democracy, A Lesson in Diplomacy, A Lesson in Improvisation. Nancy improvises her way through a dinner with friends and a guest who develops a strong, democratic affection for her. I have a number of terms for you and a brief lesson on idioms in the Enrichment Notes, so be sure to check out that video after you listen to Chapter 2. Next Friday, we'll read Chapter 3, Vicarious Flirtation, that shows us Nancy's altruistic side. Be sure to join me. This has been The Misdemeanors of Nancy by Eleanor Hoyt, illustrated by Penryn Stanlaws. Original copyright 1902. This work is in the public domain. Production copyright 2025 by Laura E. Richcreek. Thanks for listening.